The morning sun hit the pavement of Willow Creek with a deceptive calm. I sat on my porch, holding a steaming mug of coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. As a veteran detective with 15 years on the force, I appreciated the quiet moments before the chaos of the precinct took over. My marked squad car was parked neatly in my own driveway, a symbol of the service I gave to this community. But in Willow Creek, there was a different kind of law, one that didn't wear a badge but carried a clipboard. Her name was Linda, the self-appointed president of the Homeowners Association. I saw her walking down the sidewalk, her eyes scanning every lawn for a blade of grass out of place. She stopped in front of my house, her face contorting into a mask of pure indignation. She marched up my driveway like she was storming a fortress. I took a slow sip of my coffee, knowing exactly what was coming. "Good morning, Linda," I said, keeping my voice level and professional. She didn't offer a greeting in return. Instead, she pointed a manicured finger at my patrol vehicle. "This is an eyesore, Officer Miller," she snapped, her voice vibrating with unearned authority. "Our bylaws clearly state that commercial vehicles and oversized equipment are not to be parked in residential driveways overnight." I set my mug down on the side table. "Linda, this is a police cruiser," I reminded her. "It is an emergency vehicle and I am on call. It is not a commercial truck." She huffed, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "The rules do not make exceptions for the police. This neighborhood has a standard to maintain, and your car is bringing down the property value of every house on this block. I want it moved to a garage or parked off-site immediately." I stood up, towering over her slightly, though I kept my posture relaxed. "The driveway is my property, and the car is legal. If you have a problem, you can bring it up at the next board meeting." Linda narrowed her eyes, a dangerous glint appearing in them. "I am the board," she whispered, "and I will not have my authority challenged in my own kingdom." She turned on her heel and marched away, but I knew this wasn't over. People like Linda don't just let things go. They stew and they plot. For the next 3 days, I received a barrage of citations. $500 for a dusty windshield. $300 for parking at a slight angle. It was clear harassment, but I documented everything. I wasn't just a homeowner. I was a detective, and I knew how to build a case. On Friday night, I returned home from a grueling double shift. I was exhausted, my mind heavy with the details of a cold case I was trying to crack. I pulled into my driveway, locked the cruiser, and went straight to bed. I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, unaware that Linda was standing at the edge of my lawn with a cell phone in one hand and a stack of forged documents in the other. She had called a predatory towing company from the next county over, a group of guys known for taking cars first and asking questions later. She told them the vehicle was abandoned and that she had the legal right to have it removed. As the moon rose over Willow Creek, a flatbed truck backed into my driveway. The driver looked hesitant at first, seeing the police markings, but Linda was there, waving her HOA clipboard and screaming about her executive powers. She told them I had been fired, and the car was being repossessed by the city. She lied with the practiced ease of a psychopath. The driver, lured by the promise of a massive kickback, hooked up the chains. The heavy metal groaned as the cruiser was lifted into the air. Linda watched with a smile of pure triumph, her hands trembling with the excitement of finally winning. She didn't realize that she wasn't just breaking a neighborhood rule. She was committing a felony. The truck pulled away, the tires screeching against the asphalt, leaving my driveway empty for the first time in years. Linda stood there for a moment, savoring the silence, before retreating into her home to celebrate her victory. She thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable, but she had just invited the full weight of the law to crash down on her front door. I woke up at 6 in the morning, the habit of a lifetime pulling me out of sleep before the alarm even chirped. I moved through my routine mechanically, showering and dressing in my crisp uniform. I pinned my gold detective shield to my belt and headed for the door, my mind already on the morning briefing at the station. I stepped out onto the porch and froze. My heart skipped a beat, then began to hammer against my ribs. My driveway was empty. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I looked down at the concrete, seeing the fresh scratch marks where the towing chains had dragged against the ground. My marked cruiser, loaded with high-grade tactical gear, a shotgun locked in the rack, and my secure laptop containing sensitive department files, was gone. This wasn't just a car theft. This was a massive security breach. I immediately pulled out my personal phone and dialed dispatch. "This is Detective Miller," I said, my voice tight with controlled fury. "I am reporting at 10 to 99. My patrol vehicle has been stolen from my residence." Within minutes, the quiet street of Willow Creek was flooded with blue and red lights. 2 patrol units arrived, followed quickly by my sergeant. We stood in the driveway, looking at the empty space. I didn't have to guess who did it. I looked across the street and saw Linda's curtains twitch. She was watching us. I told my sergeant about the threats she had made and the citations she had been issuing. He looked at the scratch marks on the driveway and then at the houses surrounding us. "If she towed a marked unit, she is in world of trouble," he said. "Stealing a police vehicle is a felony, but taking one with a weapon and encrypted data inside? That is a different level of hell." We checked the neighborhood security cameras. One of the neighbors had a high-definition Ring camera that captured the entire event. We watched the footage on a tablet right there on the sidewalk. We saw the tow truck pull in. We saw the driver. And most importantly, we saw Linda. She was clearly visible, pointing at the car, handing the driver a set of papers, and even helping him guide the hooks onto the axle. She looked gleeful. She looked like she was enjoying every second of it. My sergeant sighed and rubbed his face. She actually did it. She actually stole a police car because of an HOA dispute. "I want her brought in," I said. "But I wanted to do it by the book. We needed to find the car first." We tracked the GPS on the cruiser. It was located at an unlicensed impound lot 20 miles away. The GPS showed the car had been moved at 2 in the morning and hadn't shifted since. I called my chief of police, Chief Henderson. He was a no-nonsense man who had mentored me since I was a rookie. When I told him what happened, there was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. He told me to stay put and that he was coming down personally. When the chief of police shows up to a neighborhood dispute, you know things have gone past the point of no return. Linda finally emerged from her house, wearing a floral robe and holding a cup of tea, acting as if she were just a concerned neighbor wondering what all the fuss was about. "Oh, Detective Miller, is something wrong?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. I didn't answer her. I just looked at her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She saw the number of officers. She saw the serious expressions on their faces. She realized this wasn't just a prank or a minor inconvenience. She had crossed a line that didn't exist in her little rulebook. Chief Henderson's black SUV pulled up to the curb. He stepped out, his uniform immaculate, his face set in a grim expression. He didn't even look at me. He walked straight up to Linda. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked. "It's Linda," she corrected him, trying to regain her composure. "Well, Linda," the chief said, his voice echoing in the morning air so every neighbor could hear. "I am the chief of police, and you are currently the primary suspect in the grand theft of a government vehicle and the theft of a firearm." Linda's face went pale, the color draining out of her cheeks until she looked like a ghost. "I didn't steal it," she stammered. "It was a violation of the HOA code. I had it legally removed." The chief stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "The HOA code does not supersede state and federal law, Linda. You orchestrated the theft of a police cruiser. That car contains a loaded Remington 870 and classified documents. By moving that vehicle, you have endangered the public and committed multiple felonies." At this point, the neighbors were all out on their lawns, watching the queen of the HOA crumble. The air in the neighborhood felt heavy as Chief Henderson stood on Linda's manicured lawn. He wasn't just a commanding officer. He was the legal custodian of every piece of equipment in the department. To him, Linda hadn't just bothered a detective. She had attacked the department itself. Linda tried to puff out her chest, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "You can't talk to me like this," she squeaked. "I have a contract with the residents of this community. I am protected by the bylaws." The chief took a step forward, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. "Your bylaws are for choosing the color of a fence, Linda. They are not a license to steal government property. Do you have any idea where that car is right now? Linda stammered, looking back toward her house. It's at the impound. I have the paperwork right here. She fumbled through her clipboard and held out a crumpled yellow sheet. The chief took it, glanced at it for 2 seconds, and then ripped it in half. This is a private towing invoice from a company that isn't even licensed to operate in this county, he said. This isn't paperwork. This is a confession. He turned to the officers standing behind him. Search the premises. I want every piece of correspondence she has sent to Detective Miller. I want the HOA records. And someone get the DA on the phone. We are charging her with grand theft auto, obstruction of justice, and possession of a stolen firearm. Linda's teacup shattered on the pavement as it slipped from her hand. Possession of a firearm? I never touched a gun, she screamed. The chief didn't flinch. You directed the movement of a vehicle containing a shotgun. In the eyes of the law, you took possession of everything inside that car the moment you ordered it towed. That is a mandatory minimum sentence in this state. Linda began to hyperventilate. The reality was finally sinking in. This wasn't a fine. This wasn't a sternly worded letter from a lawyer. This was prison. I walked over to the chief. Sir, the GPS shows the cruiser is still at the lot. I want to go retrieve it. The chief nodded. Take a transport unit. And Miller, check the weapon immediately. If a single scratch is on that car, we add vandalism of government property to the list. I headed for the transport van, but I stopped and looked back at Linda. She was being led toward a patrol car in handcuffs. Her neighbors, people she had bullied for years over the height of their grass or the style of their mailboxes, were actually cheering. One man even started filming on his phone, laughing as the handcuffs clicked shut over her wrists. It was a spectacular fall from grace. As I rode to the impound lot, my anger began to settle into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to let her off with a plea deal. She had spent years making people's lives miserable, using her tiny bit of power to crush anyone who didn't bow to her. She thought the law worked for her, but she was about to find out that the law is a double-edged sword. We arrived at the impound lot, a grease-stained yard surrounded by rusted chain-link fence. The owner of the lot saw the police van and tried to run out the back, but we had the perimeter covered. We tackled him near the back fence. Where is the car? I demanded, pinning him to the ground. He pointed toward a locked garage in the back. I broke the lock with a crowbar and swung the doors open. There she was. My cruiser sat in the dark, looking out of place among the wrecked junkers and stripped frames. I checked the rack. The shotgun was still there, thank God. I checked the laptop. The encryption hadn't been tampered with. But then I saw the damage. The tow truck driver had been careless. The front bumper was cracked, and the undercarriage was scraped raw from being dragged without a dolly. My blood boiled. This car was my office. It was where I spent 12 hours a day protecting people. And Linda had treated it like a piece of trash. I called the chief back. Sir, I have the vehicle. There is significant damage to the front end and the suspension. The chief's voice was like ice over the radio.
Copy that.
Tell the tow driver he's being charged as an accomplice. And tell Linda to get comfortable in the holding cell. She's not going home today. Or tomorrow. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal filings and board meetings. With Linda in jail awaiting her hearing, the rest of the HOA board was in a state of total panic. They realized that by allowing Linda to run wild, they had opened themselves up to massive civil liability. I filed a personal lawsuit for harassment, and the city filed a massive suit for the damage to the vehicle and the security breach. Linda's husband tried to come to my house to apologize, offering to pay for the repairs out of pocket if I dropped the charges. I looked him in the eye and told him that his wife didn't just break a car. She tried to ruin a man's livelihood and put a community at risk. There was no buying her way out of this. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed. Half the neighborhood showed up to see the HOA tyrant answer for her crimes. Linda sat at the defense table, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. She wasn't wearing her floral robes or her expensive jewelry. She was in a plain gray suit, her hair unkempt, her eyes red from crying. The prosecutor played the video from the neighbor's camera. The entire court watched as Linda directed the tow truck driver with the enthusiasm of a general leading a charge. We heard her voice on the recording, clearly telling the driver that the car was abandoned and that she wanted it gone by any means necessary. When the chief of police took the stand, the room went silent. He detailed the importance of the equipment inside the car and the danger posed to the public when a police vehicle is taken by unauthorized civilians. He didn't hold back. He called her actions a direct assault on law enforcement. When it was my turn to testify, I didn't talk about the car. I talked about the 3 years of harassment. I showed the judge the dozens of bogus citations Linda had issued. I showed the emails where she threatened to make me lose my job if I didn't comply with her personal whims. I showed a pattern of behavior that proved this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated act of malice. The judge, a stern woman known for her no-nonsense approach, didn't even wait for the closing arguments to express her disgust. "Mrs. Miller," she said, looking down from the bench, "you have used your position in this neighborhood as a weapon. You have shown a complete lack of respect for the law and the people who domesticate it. The fact that you thought your HOA bylaws gave you the power to seize a police vehicle is a level of delusion I have rarely seen in this court." Linda tried to speak, but her lawyer grabbed her arm, shaking his head. The judge continued, "I am sentencing you to 2 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. You will also pay full restitution to the city for the damages to the vehicle and a $50,000 fine." As the bailiff led her away, Linda let out a piercing wail, a sound of pure despair that echoed through the hallways. But no one in the gallery felt sorry for her. As I walked out of the courthouse, the sun was shining, and for the first time in a long time, the air felt clear. A week later, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. They voted unanimously to dissolve the current board and rewrite the bylaws from scratch. They issued a formal apology to me and every other resident Linda had bullied. They even offered to pay for a new security system for my house as a gesture of goodwill. I turned them down. I didn't want their money. I just wanted to be able to park my car in my driveway and drink my coffee in peace. That evening, I sat on my porch just like I had on that first morning. My cruiser was back in its spot, the bumper repaired and the paint shining. The neighborhood was quiet. There were no clipboards, no bogus citations, and no one measuring the height of my grass. I took a sip of my coffee and smiled. The law had returned to Willow Creek, and this time, it was here to stay. Linda was gone, but the lessons she learned would be remembered for a long time. Power is a privilege, not a right, and if you abuse it, the very system you think you control will eventually be the one that takes you down. I looked at the empty house across the street, the for sale sign already standing in the yard, and finally, I felt at home.